So Sarbanes-Oxley Act we were discussing what all the auditors should do, whether to rotate the partners and all those stuff requirements from the Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley Act applies for publicly listed companies and their auditors who are listed in PCAOB, Public Auditors Accounting Board. That's called PCAOB. And here, Sarbanes-Oxley Section 204, auditor reports to audit committee. So the auditors should report directly to the audit committee. So Section 10A of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, as amended by this act, is amended by adding at the end of the following, that is the report to audit committees. Each registered public accounting firm that performs for any issuer any audit required by this title shall timely report to the audit committee of the issuer all the critical accounting policies and practices to be used, all alternative treatments of financial information within generally accepted accounting principles that have been discussed with management officials of the issuer, ramifications of the use of such alternative disclosures and treatments, and the treatment preferred by the registered public accountants firm, and the other matters material written communication between the registered public accounting firm and the management of the issuer, such as any management letter or schedule of the unadjusted differences. See here, so here, when we take the audit of a public limited companies, if there is any our responsibility to inform the audit committee what are the accounting policies company is doing, what are the practices they have, because these accounting policies and practices which is followed by the management, that means CEO, CFOs, they decide what kind of depreciation they should follow. Those things we should report to the audit committee. Then what else? If there is any material difference between any disclosure alternatives they are using, or what else, the treatment, any other alternative treatment is preferred by the auditors, they can inform the audit committee. Also, Sarbanes-Oxley Section 302, corporate responsibility for financial reporting. So regulations require that SEC shall require for each company filing periodic of reports under the Securities Exchange Act of 1934 that the principal executive officer or officers at the principal financial officer or officers of personnel performing similar functions certify in each annual or quarterly report filed or submitted under the act that the signing officer has reviewed the report. So when you are listed in a stock exchange, you will be monitored by Securities Exchange Commission. Just like SEBI in India, in US they have SEC, Securities Exchange Commission. They are the one who is monitoring the stock exchanges there and the companies listed there. So they have prescribed that these auditors, the executives, that means CEO, CFO, or CEO, the chief operating officer, or any officer who is performing the duties of an executive officer. Okay. So what happens? Some companies they won't appoint a CEO because they don't have budget for a CEO. So what will they do? They will make the accounting officer itself give the responsibility of a CEO. So what happens? This person will be responsible for all these filings. So Sarbanes-Oxley Act says that regular SEC filings should be done. In the filing, these officers should certify that the signing officer has reviewed the report. Based on the officer's work, the report does not contain any untrue statement of the material fact or omit to state a material fact necessary in order to make the statement made in light of the circumstance under which such statements were made, not misleading. Then, based on such officer's knowledge, the financial statements and other financial information included in the report fairly presented in all material respects the financial conditions and results of operations of the issuer as of and for the period presented in the report. Then the signing officers are responsible for establishing and maintaining internal controls, have designed such internal control to ensure that material information relating to the issuer and its consolidated subsidiaries is made known to such officers by others within those entities, particularly during the period in which the periodic reports are being prepared. Have evaluated the effectiveness of the issuer's internal control as of a date within 90 days prior to the report, and have presented the report their conclusions about the effectiveness of their internal control based on their evaluation as of that date. Then the signing officer have disclosed the issuer's auditors, the audit and the audit committee of the board of directors that all significant deficiencies in the design or operations of internal controls which could adversely affect the issuer's ability to record, process, summarize, and report financial data, and have identified for the issuer's auditor any material weakness in the internal audit and any fraud, whether or not material, that involves management or other employees who have a significant role in the issuer's internal control. And the signing officer have indicated in the report whether or not there were significant changes in internal controls or other factors that could significantly affect internal control subsequent to the date of their evaluation, including any corrective actions with regarding to significant deficiencies and material weaknesses. Then, when foreign reincorporations have no effect, nothing in the section 302 shall be interpreted or applied in any way to allow any issuer to lessen the legal force of the statement recurring under the section 302 by an issuer having reincorporated or having engaged in any other transaction that result in the transfer of the corporate domicile or office of the issuer from inside the US to outside the US. So, for example, you have listed a company in securities exchange, and later on you moved your company from USA to some other country, but still if your company stocks are listed in a stock exchange in US, you will fall under all these requirements. Clear? Okay. So when subscribe for note 7, disclosure of audit committee financial expert, rules defining financial expert. So here we said when the within the board of directors they should have some committees. That one is audit committee, one is information security committee, and remuneration committee. This in this audit committee they should have at least one financial expert, right? So who is a financial expert? The commission shall issue rules as necessary or appropriate in the public interest and consistent with the protection of investors to require each issuer together with periodic reports requiring pursuant to section 13A and 15D of the SEC Act of 1939 to 34 to disclose whether or not, and if not, the reasons thereof the audit committee of that issuer is comprised of at least one member who is a financial expert in such terms defined by the commission. So we have to inform SEBI that whether we have a financial expert in our audit committee, or if we don't have a financial expert, we should inform them why we don't have a financial expert in our audit committee. Then, considerations then in defining the term financial expert for purpose of subsection A, the commission shall consider whether a person has thorough education and experience as a public accountant or auditor or a principal financial officer or controller or principal accounting officer of an issuer, or from a position involving the performance of similar function. An understanding of generally accepted accounting principles and financial statements, experience in the preparation or auditing of financial statements of generally comparable issuers, and the application of such principles in connection with the auditing, accounting or for estimates, accruals and reserves, experience with internal accounting controls and understanding of audit committee functions. So according to the session, who can be considered as financial expert? Those who have an experience as working as a public accountant or auditor or financial officer, controller of an accounting officer of a issuer. That means a company who is listed in a stock exchange. So you should have an experience in any other company which is listed in a stock exchange as any of the above positions, or you were performing the below mentioned functions. That is, you understand GAAP, you have experience in auditing of financial statements of comparable issues. That means same kind of companies. Okay, for example, you are into a banking business and you should have an experience in a banking company, then only you can be added as a financial expert in the audit committee. Okay. Then audit approaches. What are the audit approaches which should be followed? The following are the 4 audit approaches: substantial procedure, that means bottom to up, and balance sheet approach, system-based approach, and risk-based, that means top to down approach. So substantial procedures approach, that is vouching or direct verification, applies audit resources to large volume of transactions and account balances without any particular focus on specific areas of the financial statements. The bottom approach is not risk-based and views all controls equally, therefore testing a high number of controls instead of focusing on high-risk controls, process and transactions. Then balance sheet approach, there's a substantial procedure are performed on balance sheet accounts with only limited procedures applied to income statement. The justification for this approach is that if the relevant management assertions for all balance sheet accounts are tested and verified, the income reported for the accounting period will not be materially misstated. System-based approach requires auditors to assess the effectiveness of internal control and then to perform substantial procedures primarily on accounts that are least likely to meet system objectives. Reduced testing is appropriate for accounts that are likely to meet systems objectives. Next comes the risk-based approach. Risk-based approach direct audit resources to appropriate financial statement assertion based on the auditor's assessment of the risk of material misstatement, whether by fraud or by error. Auditors are required to make risk assessment at the financial statement and relevant assertions levels based on the appropriate understanding of the entity and its environment, including internal control. So risk of material misstatement at the financial statement level relate pervasively to the financial statement as a whole and potentially affect many assertions. Assertions are representations by management made either explicitly or implicitly about the recognition, measurement, presentation, and disclosure of information in the financial statement. This approach requires auditors to identify the key day-to-day risk faced by a business, consider the effect these risks could have on financial statement, and plan their audit procedures accordingly. So this audit approaches, is it clear for you or any doubt in audit approaches? Anyone? Okay, fine. Then comes the audit opinions. Okay. The audit opinions means what the auditors say about the financial statements. It can be unmodified opinion, qualified opinion, adverse opinion, or disclaimer of an opinion. So an external auditor may express 4 types of audit opinions in audit report and financial statements. That is, one is unmodified opinion. It's a conclusion that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material aspects in accordance with the framework. Then qualified opinion is the conclusion that except for the matter described in the basis for qualified opinion paragraph, the financial statements are presented fairly in all material aspects in accordance with the framework. If the auditor has obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence, misstatements are material but not pervasive. If the auditor have not obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence, the possible evidence effects of undetected misstatements are material but not pervasive. So when we say the qualified opinion, see if you have only 1 or 2 points, when you do the audit, you face 1 or 2 points issues, then you will qualify that point. You will put it in italics. What is the issue you are facing? So that will be in 1 or 2 paragraphs. You will mention that issue. That's called a qualified opinion. Then the adverse opinion is the conclusion that because of the significance of the matter prescribed in the basis of for adverse opinion paragraph, the financial statements are not presented fairly. So in the qualified opinion, except for the points which we mentioned, all other things are fairly presented. For in adverse opinion, what we say is all things what they presented is not fair. So the auditor has obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence, but the misstatements are material and pervasive. Okay, then a disclaimer of opinion is the conclusion that because of the significance of the matter prescribed in the basis for disclaimer of opinion paragraph, the auditor has not been able to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Accordingly, the auditor doesn't express an opinion of the financial statement. The possible effect of undetected misstatement and material misstatements are material and pervasive. For example, if you don't provide the required documents from an auditor, what happens? They will not be able to say their opinion on the audit, on the financial statement. So what they will do? They will give a disclaimer of opinion. They will not give any of their opinion in the financial audit report. Risk and internal. Okay. Risk and internal control. The assessment and management of risk. So in an organization, we have different kind of risk: internal risk, external risk, controllable risk, and uncontrollable risk. So what we have to do? We have to first find out what are the risks which is associated to our organization. Then, after finding the risk, what are the risks? We have to find measures to control the risk. Okay. So assessment and management of risk. Every organization faces risk, that is unforeseen obstacles of the pursuit of its objectives. Risk take many forms and can originate from inside or outside the organization. So, for example, what do you consider as a risk? Any one of you? What is a risk? Lawrence, what do you mean? What is a risk according to your definition?
No, the risk that there may be misstatements in the financial statements.
Okay, that is one risk. So no, I'm
asking. Basically, the risk that the internal control system, although that they are in place, but they are not so effective to detect.
These are the types of risk, right?
Yeah.
These are the types of risk. So what exactly means the risk? What is the meaning of risk? Any idea?
The possibility of fraud errors.
Okay, not possibility. Risk
situation of losses or damages.
These are all what you are all saying is a kind of risk, different types of risk. Risk means risk is something which will not, which will stop us from reaching our objective. Clear? Risk can be anything.
Like losing money or investments.
Yeah, that is one type of risk.
Market.
That is one type of risk. Risk can be anything, okay, which keeps you away from your objective. Clear? So, for example, I'm telling you are going to prepare for CMA examination. Clear? Even your best friend can be a risk for you. Because of him, you are not studying. Clear? Got it? So the risk means an unforeseen obstacle to pursue your objective. Clear? Got it?
we cannot say all unforeseen object as risk now.
No, unforeseen obstacles to pursue the objectives. If to reach your success, what all issues you face, it's a risk. Clear. So what you do is, for the non-risk, the risk which you know, you take your own actions. Clear. Got it? Rajiv?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So then, examples of the following risk are: the hacker may break into a university's information system, changing the grades and awarding unearned degrees. Then the CEO may bribe a member of Congress to induce legislation favorable to the firm's business. A foreign government may be overthrown in a coup detail, followed by the exploration of the firm's asset in that country. An accounting payable clerk may establish fictitious vendors in the company's information system and receive checks in payments for non-existing goods and services. A spike in interest rates may make the firm's long-term capital projects unprofitable. The introduction of a new technology may make one of the firm's premium products obsolete. So this is technology risk. This is interest rate risk. Okay. This is fraud risk, and this is political risk, you can say. Okay, clear? That next, first step is that to identify what are the risks we are going to face. Once we find out what are the risks we are going to face, we have to assess the risk, both in quantity and in quality, whether or likelihood or how much it will affect your business. So assessment of risk is a process where management identifies the organization's vulnerability. All system of internal control involves trade-off between cost and benefit. For this reason, no system of internal control can be said to be 100% effective. Organizations accept the fact that the risk can be mitigated, not eliminated. Clear? Okay, then. Risk management is the ongoing process of designing and operating internal controls that mitigate the risk, identifying the organization's risk assessment. Risk can be quantified as a combination of two factors: the severity of consequences and the likelihood of occurrence. That means how we will quantify the risk is that what are the chances of happening of a particular risk, and if that particular risk happens, how much it will affect you. Clear? See, for example, if you are considering about a risk of your company in the coming year, next year. So, if there is corona, it will affect your sales. Your profit will be less than $100,000. If there is no corona, your profit will be more than $100,000. So the risk is that if corona is there, your loss profit will be less than 100,000. Clear? The amount which we say is the severity of the risk, what we are talking, and the happening of corona for the next year is the chance we are saying. Okay, clear? Likelihood, we will say chance or likelihood or probability. Okay, so risk can be also assessed in qualitative terms. So risk assessment factors. Example here. A company is assessing the risk of its systems being penetrated by hackers. So, what are the events and consequences and likelihood? So, event is that minor penetration might happen. Okay. So, consequence is that annoyance, it will be making a disturbance in your information system, and chances is 90%. Clear? Likelihood of this minor penetration is 90%. Second thing, unauthorized viewing of internal data, that is, chances is 8%. If it happens, the consequence is that public embarrassment, loss of customer confidences, etc. Clear? Then, unauthorized alteration of internal database, the chances is that 2%. What happens is customer dissatisfaction and PR crisis. Then, although the occurrence of an annoyance level indicates its is viewed as a most inevitable, the company will not find it worthwhile to institute the level of control necessary to prevent it. By contrast, the occurrence of a disastrous level indicates it's seen as remote, but the consequences are so severe that the company is willing to institute costly internal control to ensure its prevention. Clear? Even though the minor penetrations are chances is more, but still the problem we face, the consequences we face is very little. So we don't invest much money to have a proper control over this minor penetration. But for the other things, what happens if unauthorized viewing of internal data or unauthorized alteration of internal data happens, it will affect your customer confidentiality. The consequence is very high, even though the likelihood is very less, but the company will focus on this area, even though the likelihood is less. But if it happens, it is a very embarrassing for you, then you will invest more money on those areas. Then comes audit risk models. Okay. Okay. In the AICP audit risk model, AICP means accountants, American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, AICPA. They are the one who is giving CPA certifications. So AICPA is audit risk model. The audit risk is defined as the risk that an auditor may express an inappropriate opinion on material misstatement financial statements. The model may be adaptable to the system of internal control as follows: inherent risk, control risk, detection risk, and total audit risk. So here, inherent risk is the susceptibility of one of the company's objective to obstacles arising from the nature of the objectives, assuming no related internal controls. For example, a uranium mine is inherently riskier than a shopping mall. So inherent risk means any risk which is associated to that particular business is called inherent risk. So we can't avoid inherent risk in a business. If you want to avoid an inherent risk in a business, we should quit doing that business. Clear? We should stop doing that business. Then comes the control risk. Control risk is the risk that the controls put in place will fail to prevent an obstacle from interfering with the achievement of the objective. For example, a policy requiring 2 approvals of expenditures over a certain dollar amount could be bypassed by the collusion. So we normally have these approvals from the management, right? For each payment, there is a payment, like what these protocols are there, that for a particular payment, department manager can approve, and for the amount much higher, the top level managers should approve. So these conditions are control measures which we have established. If someone bypasses this, what happens? There is a control risk. Then comes the detection risk. Is the risk that an obstacle of an objective will not be detected before a loss has occurred. For example, an embezzlement that continues for a year before detection is much costlier than one that is discovered after 1 month. Okay, so detection risk is that something happened, embezzlement or theft or fraud happened, but we detected it very late, or we didn't detect it. So in audit risk model, what they say is to find out the audit risk, the total risk is calculated, audit risk is calculated as inherent risk into control risk multiplied by detection risk. Okay. Then, what are the objectives of internal control? 3 classes of objectives direct organization to the different elements of control, that is operations, reporting, and compliance. So in operations, we should have internal control. For reporting, we should have internal control, and for the compliance also, we should have internal control. So in operations, operation objectives leading to achieving the entity's mission. Appropriate objectives including improving financial performance, productivity, quality, innovation, and customer satisfaction. Then operating objectives are also include safeguarding of assets. Objectives relating to protection and prevention, preserving assets, assist in risk assessment and development of mitigation controls. avoidance of wastage, inefficiency, and bad business decisions leading to broader objectives than safeguarding of assets. So in operations, you have two objectives, that is achieving the entity's mission, that is to improve the quality, productivity of financial performances, then safeguarding of the assets. So in safeguarding of the assets, what you have to do, you have to protect the assets from any damage, wastage, or any bad decisions you are taking. Then comes the reporting. In reporting, the internal control is that to whom we should report, what we should report. This should be controlled through an internal control system. Clear. So for example, the financial statements, we should be only viewed to the people who are authorized to view it. Internal data, all those things. So reporting. To make sound decisions, stakeholders must have reliable, timely, and transparent financial information. Reports may be prepared for use of the organization and stakeholders. Objectives may relate to financial and non-financial reporting, internal and external reporting. Then compliance. Entities are subject to laws, rules, and regulations that set minimum standards of conduct. Examples include taxation, environmental protection, and employer relations. Compliance with internal policies and procedures is an operational matter. Linkage. The entity's overall objective must connect its particular capabilities and prospects with the objectives of its business units. As conditions change, the objectives of subunits must be altered to adapt to changes in the objective of the entity as a whole. For example, if you have a change in your objective, that change should be reflected to the lower level departments also, lower level subunits also. Then, achievements of objectives. An internal control system is more likely to provide reasonable assurance of achieving the reporting and compliance objectives than the operational objectives. Reporting and compliance objectives are responsible to standards established by the external parties such as regulators. Thus, achieving those objectives depends on actions almost entirely within the entity's control. Then, however, operational efficiencies may not be within the entity's control because it is affected by human judgment and many external factors. Then, roles and responsibilities regarding internal control. Responsible parties. Who are the responsible parties? There is board of directors and its committees. So the entity's commitment to integrity and ethical values is reflected in the board selection for the chief executive officer and senior vice president positions. So for example, when the board of directors choose a CEO itself, the employees will understand what the standard of the company is going to be. See, for example, if your CEO comes with t-shirt and jeans in an office, so every employees will follow his way, right? Normally. And for example, your CEO itself coming late to the organization, then employees will also start coming late to the organization. Or if your CEO is very strict, he is having a very good ethical value, then every employees will be forced to follow that. That we call it as tone at the top. Okay. To be effective, board members should be objective that a role regarding internal control is the oversight only capacity, have knowledge of the organization's industry, and be willing to ask the relevant questions about the management's decision. So board's responsibility is to take the oversight of the internal control and to question the management on the relevant areas which they want to understand. Then important subcommittees of the board is organizations of sufficient size and complexity include the following, that is audit committee, compensation committee, nomination or governance committee, finance committee, and risk committee. What are the duties of a senior management? Senior management is responsible for establishing and maintaining the organization system of internal control. The CEO also establishes the tone at the top. Organizations inevitably reflect the ethical values and control consequences of the CEO. Then internal auditors, although management is ultimately responsible for the design and operation of the system of internal control, an organization's internal audit function has a consulting and advisory role. So the internal auditors should ensure that internal control is working properly, and they should advise to the management regarding the internal control, whether it's not working properly or not. Then internal audit also evaluates the adequacy and effectiveness of internal control in response to risk in the entity's oversight, operations, and information system. For example, internal audit evaluates control over the following: that is, achievement of the organization's strategic objectives, reliability and integrity of financial and operational information, effectiveness and efficiency of operations and programs, safeguarding of assets, compliance with law, regulations, standard policies, procedures, and contracts. So that's why the internal auditors check our contracts, whether we are filing our returns properly, uh, whether the company renewal is done every year on proper time, what are the asset protection strategies we are using, what are the internal controls for asset protection, and whether we have achieved our, they do the budgeting analysis also, whether we are achieving our organization objectives or not. So these all things will be done by the internal auditors. To remain independent in the conduct of their reviews, the internal auditor function cannot be responsible for selecting and executing controls. This is solely the responsibility of the management. So what is the duty of internal auditors? They will check whether the internal control is established or working properly, or if any deficiency is there, their responsibility is to report to the management. Other entity personnel, that is, everyone in the organization must be aware that he has a role to play in internal control, and every employee is expected to perform his or her appropriate control activities. In addition, all employees should understand that they are expected to inform those higher in the organization in sense of poor control. If there is a poor control you see in your internal control system, you should inform to your higher manager, to your next level manager. An external parties, that is, external auditors, regulators, then parties interacting with the entities. Then external auditors. Traditionally, the independent accountants have been required by their professional standards to consider the auditing system of internal control as part of their audit of the entity's financial statement. This is no longer simply a good practice, self-imposing by the accounting profession. The PCAOB had made it a legal requirement for auditors of public companies to examine and report on internal control. Then, legislators and regulators. Congress passed the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and Servants of the Act, both of which sets legal requirements with regarding to the internal control. Then, parties interacting with the entity. The following are the examples of control-related information received from outside sources. A former customer informs management that a sales representative attempted to arrange a kickback scheme in return for the customer's business. A supplier reveals inventory and shipping problems by complaining about incomplete orders. Then parties without a supplier or customer relationship with the entity also may provide insightful into the function of the controls. It can be news media channels or any other outsiders who might see a issue in our internal control system. For example, as a condition for granting a loan, bank may require that certain ratios be kept above or below specific levels. As a result, management may need to pay closer attention to control over cash and inventory levels that it did previously. So banks will put their own, like when we take the loans, the banks will mention what should be our current asset ratio. It should not go below a particular limit. or a debt coverage ratio, interest coverage ratios. These ratios should be fulfilled if you're having a loan. So if you want to maintain these ratios properly, you should have a proper internal control system. So these banks or the outsiders will force you to implement internal control system in your organization. Then comes the financial analysts, bond rating agencies, and news medias. The action of these parties can inform an entity about how it is perceived by the world at large. Like for example, bond rating agencies, what they do the rating of your shares and bonds. So they will mention what is the rating you have in the market. Or in the news medias, what happens if any of your issues will be populated to outsiders or even to you by news media channels, by any users. Then comes outsourced service providers. Some of an entity's business functions, example IT, human resource, or internal audit, may be performed by external service providers. Accordingly, management must manage the risk of outsourcing. Thus, it must implement a means of evaluating the effectiveness of control over the outsourced activities. So flowchart. So flowchart is a presentation of the process using pictorial symbols and are useful in understanding, evaluating, documenting internal controls and system development. Flowcharts provide a visual of the various steps of a process from the beginning to the end. Flowchart assists with identifying strength and weakness in internal controls. A document flowchart effectively displays the document flows through various departments. The flowchart symbols have been standardized by the both American National Standards ANSI and International Standards Organization ISO. So from here to the right are some standards for flowchart symbols representing process endpoints and connections. So when you start a flowchart or end a flowchart, this is your symbol which should be used. Then this is the connection between points in the same page and connection between different pages. When you go to next page, because when you put a process in a flow chart, it will not fit in one A4 size paper or in one sheet. It should be transferred to the next pages. For example, if you are talking about the document flow in an organization, how does a purchase invoice come to purchase department? So how it happens is when the product is delivered, this delivery report or what we say a delivery note and the invoice is given to the storekeeper. Then the storekeeper checks and authorizes, and he will, if it is okay, he will send it to the accounts payable department, and they will verify the invoices and delivery notes and with the system whether it is matching or not. After they verify it is okay, then they will transfer this to the next department for the payment. So in these cases, this connection should be done through, if it's in the same connection, we'll use a circle. If it's going to the next page, we will use this symbol. Then key operations, computer operations, manual operations, and decision points. Decision points means here, if you have this design in your flowchart, here you will have a question, yes or no. Okay, so if it is yes, you will go either to right or you go down, or if it is a no, you can extend to the next process what should be done if it is a no. Then below are the some stand then below are some standard flowchart symbols represent the input and output. So generalized symbols for input or output used when the medium is not specified. Then display of a video terminal, online storage, offline storage, document or a report, and database symbols. So these symbols you can use in a flowchart. Then here, this is how a flowchart looks like. Okay. When you start, is today your birthday? Accept user's response here. How do you take the response from the user? they didn't mention whether it is a document or online or offline you're taking. Okay, so it's in this model. Then it goes to the decision box. Is today your birthday or not? If it is yes, you will go to the display, video display. Congratulations. If it is no, it will go to a video display. Sorry. After that, it will go to the end process. That's stop. This is one example they have given. Then here, horizontal flowcharts, also called system flowcharts, depicts areas of responsibility in vertical columns. Activities and documents flow back and forth between departments across the page. For example, here, sales cause inventory levels to fall below the reorder point. What happens here? When a computer process starts, okay, inventory levels above the reorder point or not. If the inventory level is above the reorder point, we will stop. If it is no, then what happens? If it is a no, then we have to order. So what you will do, you will check the inventory master files, inventory and shipping programs, update the inventory file, then request will be sent. Okay, then approve program, recommended supplier, order quantity and the terms, or make appropriate changes. Then purchase order program will be starting. Edit the transactions, print the purchase order, add to the open PO files. Okay, so what happens when we issue a purchase order? It will go to a open PO files, and okay, when we order it, this will be accepted. Authorization to accept the shipment will be there. Once the authorization comes, PO will be issued to the vendor. So vendor will receive the purchase order. So when we issue a purchase order to the vendor, it will be open in the process, right? After, when the vendor delivers the goods, we receive it. Okay, goods received, enter the goods received note. Then we will enter the transactions and record the receipt of the goods. Then what happens? Vendor will provide an invoice along with that. Enter the invoice information. We will enter the invoice data. That is, what are the transactions, what are the items, prices, and all thing in the system. So what happens? The system will check with the open purchase orders whether it is received or not. Then it will be transferred to the accounts payable master file. This is all what happens in the back end of a system. Next comes PCAOB, Public Accountants Oversight Board. So one of the requirement of the servants of the Act is that the annual financial statement audit also address the firm's system of internal control over financial reporting. Long back, like 10-15 years back, when we see the audit report, they were mentioning only about the financial statement is true or fair, and all. But nowadays, we need the audit report will state two things. One is the fairness of the financial statement as well as the internal control, how the internal control is working. If the auditors doesn't check how the internal control is working, they can't give an opinion about the audited financial statement. So the PCAOB issued its auditing standards number 2201, an audit of internal control over financial reporting that is integrated with an audit of financial statements to provide guidance when these audits are integrated. Auditing standard 2201 requires external auditors to express an opinion on both the system of internal control and over financial reporting and the fair presentation of the financial statement. So the auditor primarily considers when assigning a firm's internal control or financial reporting is whether they affect the financial statement assertions or not. As per AS 2201, the auditor should use a top-to-down risk-based approach to audit internal controls over financial reporting. Under the top-down approach, the auditor begins at the financial statement level, focuses on entity level controls, and works down to significant accounts and disclosures and their relevant assertions. So that means, yeah, they are using a balance sheet approach from the top to bottom. From the balance sheet or financial statements, they will dig down to transactions. Then AS 2201 focus on the existence of material weakness in internal control, because a company's internal control cannot be considered effective if one or more material weakness exists to form a basis for presenting an opinion. The auditor must plan and perform the audit to obtain competent evidence that is sufficient to obtain reasonable assurance about whether material weakness exists as of the date specified in management assessment. Material weakness in internal control or financial report may exist even when the financial statements are not materially misstated. Even though your financial statements are properly presented, still there can be drawbacks in your internal control system or weakness in your internal control system. The AICPA's auditing standard defines material weakness as follows. Material weakness is a deficiency or combination of deficiencies in internal control that results in reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of the financial statement will not be prevented or timely detected and corrected. So, what do you mean by weakness in an internal control system? Weakness means due to some reason, if we can't find out any misstatement or prevent a misstatement, or we can't detect misstatement timely, then we can call it as a weakness. Following reporting oriented focus for internal control standard, in contrast with the broader view that internal controls a process to aid the organization in achieving its goals. COSO framework. So COSO framework is a model of internal control which should be followed by the companies. This gives a framework how the organization should set up their internal control system. So internal control integrated framework is widely accepted by as a standard for the design and operation of internal control systems. Our regulator or legal requirements may specify another control model or design. So how does the COSO framework came into establishment? So I think you know the Watergate investigation happened in US, right? Now back. It bring a lot of changes in US democracy and all those stuffs. Even for the companies also, it bring a lot of changes. There's a lot of documents from the US government where came out, and it brought a lot of problems for the country. So here in Watergate investigation revealed that US companies were bribing government officials, politicians and political parties in foreign countries. The result was the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act was established because of that. The private sector also responded by forming the National Commission on Fraudulent Financial Reporting on 1985, and NCFFR is known as Tradeway Commission because James C. Tradeway was its first chairman. So this Tradeway Commission is the one who brought COSO framework. So the Tradeway Commission was originally sponsored and funded by 5 professional accounting organizations based in the US. That is CMA Institute, AICPA Institute, CIA Institute, and 2 more other institutes are there. Then this group of 5 became known as Committee of Sponsoring Organization of the Tradeway Commission, that is COSO. The commission recommended that the group of 5 organizations cooperate in creating guidance for internal control. The result was Internal Control Integrated Framework published in 1982, which was modified in 1992 and 2013. So, the COSO model defines internal control as follows. Internal control is a process effected by entities, board of directors, management, and other personnel is designated to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives relating to operations, reporting, and compliance. So, what do we mean by internal control? Internal control is a process. If this process, who will carry out this process? Board of directors, managers, and other personnel who is designated to provide reasonable assurance. They should give a reasonable assurance that internal control is effective Okay. Then, okay. Thus, internal control is intended to achieve three classes of objectives: and ongoing process affected by people at all levels of organization levels, example the board, management, and all of the employees. Able to provide reasonable but not absolute assurance, adaptable to the entity's structure. Components of internal control: supporting the organization in its efforts to achieve objectives are the following five components. That is a control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, and monitoring. Okay. So, to remember this internal control setup, okay, I will tell you as a story. For example, how does an internal control should work is, for example, you are in a war. Okay, you're fighting with some other country and you're in a war. So the place the war happens, okay, the place the fighting is happening, we call it as control environment. For example, if you are a soldier, you are in a control environment. So you can't do whatever you want, okay. Whatever facilities you have to use it. If you are in a controlled environment, first you have to find out what are available there. What is the things you have. Second thing, you have to analyze or assess the risk you are facing, like how many guns you have, how many equipments you have, and how many equipments the opposite party have. These all things you should assess. Second thing, control activity. Control activity is that how to stop if they start firing to you, how to safeguard yourself, and this is all the control activities you should do. Next comes the information and communication. If your products, whatever the guns, bombs, whatever things you have, if it is finishing or you need more support from your team, you have to inform and you have to communicate with your backend team. Okay, so then what they will do, they will provide you with sufficient support, and you have to monitor again the process. Okay, you have to start monitoring whether this is working properly or not. So this is the kind of chain activity. It's the same system we have in internal control system also. Clear? So in internal control system, the control environment is a set of standards, procedures, and structure that pervasively affect the system of internal control. 5 principles relating to the internal control. That is, the organization demonstrate a commitment to integrity and ethical values. For example, if your company itself doesn't have an ethical value, will the employees work ethically? No, right? Normally it doesn't happen. So first of all, the company itself should have a policy of integrity and ethical values. So how does the policy will be transferred to the employees? By setting the tone at the top. That means if you just put what are the policies should be followed, or what are the ethical values you should follow, and in the company it is just listed and printed and given to as an employee manual, no one will follow it, right? So how does employees will follow? When it is shown in the action. So who should show in the action? The top level managers. Okay, when the CEO, CFOs, all those people show a ethical value, obviously the employees in the lower level also will start following it. So setting the tone at the top through words and actions, the board of directors and management communicate their attitude towards integrity and ethical values. Establishing standards of conduct, the board and management create expectations that should be understood at all organization levels and by outside service providers and business partners. Then evaluating the performance of individual and team based on the established standards of conduct, correcting deviations in a timely and consistent manner. So not only you and your employees should have a integrity and ethical value, but your suppliers or whomever you are dealing with should also have a ethical value or integrity, and or they should know what is your ethical value. That's why when you purchase something from like organic goods, organic food items, are you sure that what you purchase is organic? So for example, you are a supplier of organic food. So what you do is you purchase from farmers and you pack it and you sell it in the market. So you say it is a organic food. But if you are not monitoring your farmers, or if your farmers are not knowing that you are selling an organic food, they will definitely put pesticides. So you should inform or transfer your integrity and ethical values to all others who are dealing with yours. Then second point is the board demonstrate independence from management and exercise oversight of internal control. The board establishes oversight responsibilities. The board identifies and accepts its oversight responsibilities, applies relevant experience by defining, maintaining, and periodically evaluating the skills and expertise needed among its members to ask difficult questions to management and take appropriate actions. Then operates independently. Board and management is different, so board will act independently. Board will not interfere into day-to-day activities, they will just monitor it. The board includes enough members who are independent and objective in evaluation and decision making. For example, in some decisions, all members of the audit committee must be outside directors. Then provides oversight. The board is responsible for oversight of management's design, implementation, and conduct of internal control. Then next one, what does the board does? Management does. Management establishes with board's oversight a structure, reporting lines, and appropriate authorities and responsibilities. Management considers all structures of the entity. Variable consideration in establishing organization structure include the nature of the business, size and geography, scope of entity, risk. Some of them outsource some of them outsource, connection with outside service providers and partners, assessment of authority to different management levels, assignment of authority to different management levels, definition of reporting lines, reporting requirements. Uh, who does this? Management. Then that means your CEOs and CFOs, they will decide who should report to whom and what should be reported and all. Then establishes and evaluates reporting lines. The trends in corporate governance has been been to allow employees closer to day-to-day operations to make decisions, design, assign, and limits authorities and responsibilities. It's the organization demonstrate a commitment to attract, develop, and retain competent employees in aligning with objectives. Policies and practices reflects expectation of competence. Internal control is strengthened when management specifies what competencies are needed for particular jobs. The board and management evaluates competencies and address shortcomings. Employees and outside service providers have the appropriate skills and knowledge to perform their jobs. The organization attracts, develops, and retains individuals. The organization is committed to hire individuals who are competent and have integrity. Ongoing training and mentoring are necessary to adopt employees to the control requirement of a changing environment. Senior management and the board plan and prepare for succession. So, what is the duties of board? They have to find out relevant talent for the organization. They have to develop the people. When after recruiting, just you have to provide courses or career advancement for the employees, and they should retain the employees who is valuable to the organization. Then the organization holds individual accountable for the internal control responsibility in pursuit of objectives. Management and the board enforces accountability through structures, authorities, and responsibilities, establishes performance measurement, incentives, and rewards, evaluates performance measures, incentives, and rewards for ongoing relevance. Then consider excessive pressure, then evaluates performance and reward for disciplined individuals. And the control environment reflects the attitude and action of board and management regarding significance of control within the organization. Internal control policies and procedures help ensure that management directives to mitigate risk are carried out. They are intended to ensure that necessary actions are taken to address risk to achieve management's objectives. Then comes risk assessment. So with all these 5 areas, you will understand what is an organization is. For example, if you are going to join a new organization, you should understand what is the culture the organization is having. The how you will understand the culture of an or an environment of an organization by knowing what is the management doing, what is the top, who is the top manager, who is the CEO, from which culture he is, and what culture he pursued, what are the ethical values of the CEOs. Then you will see what are the board doing in the organization, and what are the reporting lines, structures in the organization, what kind of business they are doing. Then how they treat their employees, you should understand then whether you are responsible for whatever you are doing and all those stuff. From this, you will understand the control environment of the organization. Next, you will see what are the risk assessment. The risk assessment process encompasses an assessment of the risk themselves and the need to manage organization change. This process is a basis for determining how the risk should be managed. 4 principles are relating to the risk assessment. The organization specifies objectives with sufficient clarity to enable the identification and assessment of risk relating to 5 types of objectives. In risk assessment, we have 4 principles, okay, and inside the 4 principles, we have specific objectives. In this specific objectives, we have 5 types of objectives. That is operational, financial, external financial reporting, external non-financial reporting, internal reporting, and compliance. The organization then identifies the risk to the achievement of objectives across the entity and analyze risk to determine the appropriate risk response. We will identify what are the risks we have, and we will analyze and we will find out how to respond to a particular risk. The management must focus carefully on risk at all levels of the entity and take the necessary actions to manage them. So when you check the risk in an organization, you will not check for a risk in one particular branch or just to the head office. You will check across the organization, all the departments, all the subunits, all the product lines, everywhere you will check what are the risks associated with them. Then, after finding the risk, you need to find out how to mitigate the risk, how to deal with the risk. For the risk response, you have different methods. One is risk avoidance, risk retention, risk reduction, risk sharing, and risk exploitation. So risk response consider how each risk should be managed, whether to avoid, accept, reduce, or share the risk, and design of control strategies for risk response include the following. That is risk avoidance. How to avoid a risk? By just avoiding to do that activity. If you play football, you will hurt your leg. Then to avoid that hurting of leg, what you should do? You should avoid the risk. You should avoid playing football. So risk avoidance ends the activity from which the risk arises. For example, the risk of having a pipeline sabotaged in an unstable region can be avoided by simply selling the pipeline, by simply avoiding the doing that process. Then risk retention accepts the risk of an activity. This term is synonymous for self-insurance. So we are ready to take the risk. Okay. Then risk reduction. Risk reduction lowers the level of risk associated with an activity. For example, risk of system penetration can be reduced by maintaining a robust information system function within the organization. Then comes the risk sharing, that is transferring some losses potential to another party. Examples are purchasing insurance, hedging, and entering into joint ventures. So when you take insurance, what the insurance company do is they are sharing the risk which you are facing. Then risk exploitation seeks risk to obtain a high return on investment. Even though some activities it is very risky, but you will take it. For example, investing in shares or investing in a company which is a new company, new mode company, or which is a very risky business platform, you will invest. Why? To take the maximum return. The more the risk, the more the return is. Then, the organization considers the potential for fraud in assessing risk, fraud risk to the achievement of objectives. The organization must consider various types of frauds, assessing incentives and pressures for doing the fraud, and assess the opportunities, and assess the attitudes and rationalizations. That means, for example, if an employee does a fraud, what is the pressure he was having, what are the opportunities he is having, and what is the rationalization he is giving, what is the justification he is giving for doing that fraud. The organization identifies and assesses changes that could significantly affect the system of internal control. Significant change could occur in an organization's external environment, business model, and leadership. Thus, internal control must be adapted to the entity's changing circumstances. Then comes the control activities. So these policies and procedures help ensure the management directives and risk responses are carried out. Whether automated or manual, they are adapted in various levels of entity and stages of process. They may be preventive or detective. The segregation of duties usually present in organizations as part of control activities. Three principles relating to the control activities is that organization selects and develop control activities that contribute to the mitigation of risk, to the achievement of objectives to acceptable levels. Then organization selects and develop general control activities over technologies to support the achievements of objectives. Then the organization deploys control activities through policies that establishes what is expected and procedures that puts policies into action. Information and communication. The information system enables the organization to obtain, generate, use, and communicate information to maintain accountability and measures and review performances. Three principles relating to information and communications are: the organization obtains or generates and uses relevant quality information to support the function of internal control. The organization's internally communicates information, including objectives and responsibilities of internal control necessary to support the function of internal control. Then organization communicates with external parties regarding matters affecting the functioning of internal control. So the information and communication is important. Why? Because information system is where we record our data. So this data should be obtained properly. It can generate and use, and this data can be communicated also. Then monitoring activities, control systems, and the way controls are applied over time. Monitoring is the process that assesses the quality of internal control performance over time to ensure that the control continues to meet the needs of the organization. The following are the two principles leading the monitoring activities. That is the organization selects, develops, and performs ongoing or separate evaluations to determine whether the components of internal controls are present and functioning. So in monitoring, first what they have to do is that they should select or develop the processes which can evaluate the internal control while the internal control is running. Okay, or you should put in place a separate evaluation method to evaluate whether the internal control system is working or not. Then the organization evaluates and communicate control deficiencies in a timely manner. Then relationship of objectives, components, and organization structure. The COSO model may be displayed as a cube with rows, slices, and columns. So here, what happens in an entity when we apply COSO framework? In an entity, we will apply all over the entity, like entity level, division, operating unit, or function. Whatever the entity, we will apply all the things. That means in entity level also we need operations. entity level, we need reporting, we need compliance, or even in function level also we need operations, reporting, compliance, or in head office wise or operating unit wise also we have to put in place these objectives, that is operational objectives, reporting and compliance. Then in each of the places we should have control environment, that's components. Operations should have control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information communication and monitoring. All these objectives and these components should be applied in all entity levels, like entity level, divisions, operations and function levels. Clear? Okay, done. Any doubts?
No.